Tolo, your host, and welcome to the Dunamis EQ Leadership Podcast. We're here to empower you to lead yourself and others with emotional intelligence. Let's go.
Chris, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining.
Hi, Taylor. Great to be here. Thank you for inviting me. I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Me too. Absolute pleasure. So we've had a couple of really good chats. So I'm really looking forward to getting a bit more into understanding more about you, your career, your leadership journey. So would you mind just introducing yourself to everyone that's listening?
Yeah. So hi, everybody. My name's Chris Green. I am an entrepreneur in the digital mental health space currently. I am building a platform to help people with low severity mental health conditions, but also I have other interests in related mental health and workplace wellbeing initiatives that are happening at the minute. So working with a couple of different other brands to kind of join all the dots to deliver everything as a kind of like single end-to-end solution. So busy time for me. I'm quite old, but I love what I do. And I'm on this journey because I decided that kind of towards the swan song years of my career, I would do something where...
So you mentioned about the low severity mental health. So can you talk a little bit more about the platform that you're building, what that means? Because you gave me a really good explanation when we first spoke about it. So I'd love for you to explain that.
So the problem that we have with our mental health service provision currently is that there's a huge amount of demand on it, and as a result of that, it's struggling to cope with the amount of people who need help. So that system, unfortunately, kind of has to filter people into different channels. And the problem we have is that if you go and see your doctor and you end up getting an assessment and the assessment scores you as low severity, the system currently will bump you out of the treatment pathway and ask you to go and self-help. And the market out there to find a solution for your problem when you're trying to look yourself is quite confusing. And also the resources that you're given when you're asked to go and self-help are really, they're quite old. When I say old, they're self to get over that issue and progress and get yourself back to your normal self. So what we're doing is we're creating an assessment tool that allows you to come onto the platform. It's all free. It's not subscription. You can come on, you can use the platform. It's got content on there where you can get further advice from different experts. But at the point at which you do the assessment and the assessment says, okay, you have a low severity mental health condition and you need some help, it will signpost you immediately into a treatment pathway where we use a very well established but not very commonly used methodology called single session intervention, where you're given access to a coach or a therapist, and then that they book you into a single session of coaching or therapy that allows you to identify what the main driver of your life challenge is. They give you some help and some strategies to overcome that life challenge, and then you take another assessment through the process to check how well you're doing, at the point at which the assessment might engage with it and be expected to book onto a multiple session solution where you have a minimum of 6.
That's amazing. And so what's it called? Are you ready to launch yet? Or did you want to, we can always put the link in the comments as well.
Yeah, so cool. So we've built the prototype. We are going out in September to raise money to build the full platform, which is called Back on Track, which I think is a really cool name for what we're about. It's not about, it's to help you to get to that point where you feel you've got a handle on the strategy and that you can effectively get yourself feeling back to your normal self again. We're hoping that it will be ready to go live in January, February 2024. So yeah, we're almost there. It's been a bit of a journey, and we've been on this journey now for about 3 years with research and building prototypes, doing some pilots, and making sure that we've got the right focus on the right solution. But I'm confident we're there now. So we're just on the finance bit now. The worst bit, which
That's
is
the easy
raising
part,
the money
right?
yeah, absolutely. It's just raising the money to get the platform built, and then we'll be able to go live and run a proper pilot on it. So yeah, it's really exciting. I'm really excited. Yeah. So emotional intelligence for me is really about understanding all of the factors that influence the environment around you, and from a particular period in a year, where if you're a seasonal business, then you'll find that certain times of year are going to be busier than other, and with that busyness comes that that kind of greater stress problem. But it's also about understanding that your people bring things to work with them that you can't influence, but still influence what happens in your workplace. And you have to be able to understand that that's a natural process. Work is probably the one place in our lives that we spend most of our time. But in our private lives, we might have a relationship issue, or there might be an illness in the family, which is quite common. And that can create stresses in an individual that have to naturally come to work. So you have to understand all of those factors and be really mindful of those factors when you're managing a team and leading, a team to deliver for your business or to deliver for your department, or however it all is structured. And I think for me, emotional intelligence is having the bandwidth to be able to understand that that's natural. People do. I mean, I'm no different as a leader. I'd be no different to any one of my colleagues in that, things go on in the background and you bring those things to work. And yes, they are naturally going to impact the way that you behave sometimes, even at work. And, someone who comes to work with a low mood, in their own right, they've managed to get themselves into work to be there and be present. And you have to understand sometimes that, having those trusted relationships where you can talk to your staff and ask them if everything's okay, and they feel that it's a safe space to have those conversations, is critical to you being able to build trust in a team. And if there's trust, then I think you've kind of cracked it. I think your engagement, but both ways, not just me to my colleague, but back, means that we can have an honest conversation, we can have an honest relationship, and we can care. I mean, we should care about our people.
Would you mind talking a bit about your career before? It sounds like this is almost like your second career with Back on Track and some of the other things that you're doing. Would you mind talking a bit about your first career?
Yeah, of course. I mean, so my career started, it's weird. I had a very clear picture of where I wanted my career to go from the minute I started uni, actually. I had a plan, and it's quite rare. I mean, I know I've got 4 kids, and my youngest is 17 and my eldest is 27, and they're all on different career paths at the minute. And I think it would be fair to say that they probably, with the exception of the 17-year-old who's doing his A-levels, the other 3 kind of stumbled on their pathways just by having jobs and experience. Whereas when I was at uni, I was right, okay, so I'm going to do this course. I did business studies with marketing. I'm going to start an agency because I'm really, really interested in branding and really interested in the ad world. And it was all triggered by someone I met at, I think, the age of 16, who worked for J. Walter Thompson in Manchester and was telling me how glamorous the ad world was. And I was like, well, this sounds like I need to be in this world. At that time, I had hair. I was young. I was like, I think that's the industry for me. So I did the obligatory. I got my degree. I got my diploma in marketing. I got my diploma in market research, and I did the obligatory 3 years in sales, because they say, at least my tutor at uni used to say to me, you got to do sales. You've got to understand, if you're marketing, what it's like to sell a product. So you've got to be in that environment. You've got to understand how to engage with a client, how to engage with an audience. And you've got to know the highs and the lows of it, because you are putting the messaging out there for that salesperson to go and complete the process. And so I did the sales, which I thoroughly enjoyed. And I deliberately chose working bizarre, this, I know it sounds weird, working for a printing company who sold to ad agencies.
Right.
Because I thought, well, if I sell into an ad agency,
yes,
I can get contacts in the ad world, and I can start picking brains and understanding, and maybe I can find people who might want to work with me, or maybe I can find an opportunity to work in an agency. So that's what I did for 3 years, and I really enjoyed my 3-year period in sales. I was very fortunate that I was successful because I am a people person, and I genuinely believe that people buy from people they like. So, I had some good relationships. I had some great clients. I sold a lot of print. First 6 months, I sold nothing and was panicking, but it was just building up to the, have confidence, have belief in yourself that you're going to be able to do it. And it all came good. And, I love the freedom of it, actually. I love the freedom to be in a car and to be making phone calls and going to see people. We were just experiencing mobile phones when I did that, by the way.
Yeah.
They were all car mounted phones, so that just shows how old I am.
I see.
And it was super cool. I really enjoyed it. And then I took the decision one day. I went to see the MD who had actually employed me and said, look, it's time for me to go. I've got this plan and I'm going to start an agency. And I'd been successful. I'd made quite a bit of commission money, and I put it all in the bank. Thought, right, that's the budget now to start this business. And I'm very fortunate. I met somebody who was quite established in the ad world in Manchester at the time, and he was starting a breakaway agency. And he said, would you like to invest and become our sort of client services director? So I did. So I bought into that business. We ran it for 4 years, and then to be honest, I decided to leave. I just decided one day, this isn't my business, it's their business. I have a stake in it, but I don't feel like I'm really making lots of decisions. So I decided to break away, which I did. I broke away and set up another agency, which we moved directly into web. So we were one of the first agencies in Manchester to sell web services into businesses. But then I chose not to sell web to clients, to end users, i.e. businesses. I decided to sell it to agencies because I thought, this is going to be the quickest way to gain lots of traction, is to go to agencies who know they've got clients who need to progress now to a digital pathway, sell it to them, conceptualize it, sell them a package, and then I will go and represent them selling web for them to their clients and building their websites. And that's what I did. And we had a great 6 or 7 years doing that. It was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And then India came on stream, and the hourly rates in web just decimated, because that's what happens. It's like technology. When you used to buy an LCD screen, it was 3,000 quid, and now you can get the same screen for £399 from AO online. So technology changes the way you do things, and so we moved into digital. And then I decided that it was time to move from web into the next channel, and I was really interested at that time in out-of-home media, in digital screens in high footfall locations. So I applied for a job with an up-and-coming media company, and I was successful, and I worked with them for about a year as a consultant, just working in various roles, just on a, just basically, can you do this today? It's a startup, basically. So it was literally, right, today I put this hat on, tomorrow I'll put another hat on. And we progressed into that, and I finally became MD of that business. And from there on, just progressed in the out-of-home media. After about 6 years with them, just moved on. It was kind of like cycles. And remember, we were talking the other day when we were setting up the conversation for today, and we were talking about how economies go through cyclical change, like we're in at the minute, and I think careers go through cyclical change as well. And it was kind of like, it felt like natural breaks to be able to move on to the next and the next. And it was difficult making that final transition into a business where I wasn't in charge, and that sounds awfully controlling, but it wasn't. It was just, you naturally get to a point where at some point somebody's going to say, can you just come and do this for me? but you're not the one making the decisions, and you're the one reacting to decisions that are being made for you. Yeah. So that was interesting. So I've had quite a varied career, and then my son became quite poorly when he was about 14, I think it was. We'd moved house, and he was being bullied at school. He was the new boy, and it created this huge kind of moment in my life where I decided I needed to take stock of everything. I was always a great dad, and I am genuinely a very loving father, and always have been. But my work always interfered. This classic situation. My work always interfered with my relationship with my family. So if I was at home at the weekends, they had my attention 100%. Like the phone was off. But if I was working on projects in the week, I could be flying all over the place. I was flying to America, Canada, Europe, the Middle East. I had a project in the Middle East which took up a lot of my time, building a network in Abu Dhabi and Dubai and in Jordan and places like that. And when Callum had the problem, I was like, I didn't see this coming at all, and it led to him having a severe mental health condition, and it was a bit of a wake-up call for me to start thinking, hang on a minute, you're ever present when you're with the family, but you've not seen this problem escalating, and it took me by surprise, and I literally stopped working. I literally had a great boss who I was working with in Abu Dhabi. I mean, I was doing it as under a company in the Middle East, and I said, look, I'm going to have to leave. I've got to go home. I've got to help my wife with this problem, because we had 4 children and Callum was the eldest. And he was brilliant. He said, right, you work from the UK, you can fly in and out when you can to help us to do the final parts of the delivery of the network. And I spent a lot of time with Callum, and it just made me realise I needed to stop and work with him on overcoming that issue, which we did. But it changed my whole focus, and it got me interested in mental health. It got me in thinking about this space, and I was interacting with all the practitioners who were dealing with him, and all of the agencies, the local agencies that were dealing with him, and it just opened my eyes up to kind of the complexities behind how you manage mental health, and specifically at the time in a teenager. And from then on, I became totally focused on the family, and work became secondary. And before that, it had always been the other way around. So from then on, I kind of, to be honest, went from being always in a position of authority and having to make decisions to just working with people who gave me the flexibility to be ever present and with my family. And if I needed to have a day off to go and be with Callum, to go and see somebody, that was possible. So yeah, life changed quite significantly at that point, and I went down a different pathway. And actually, that's when that pathway opened up to me how important well-being was for individuals, because now I was not part of the team that was creating the environment. I was inside the environment that had been created for me to work within. And some of them were quite challenging, actually, from a well-being perspective. And it just made me think, wow, there's companies here who are leaders in their field, whose brand is respected by the market, but whose people seem to be a little bit lost because they're high pressure environments. They're forced to work stupid hours, and I'm not decrying that, because as an ad agency owner, that's the way it works. But these were industries where people needed to be looked after, and I just genuinely felt that we needed to start banging the drum more about how looking after staff is actually an investment worth making, and that actually we shouldn't be driving our people into the ground, and we shouldn't be comfortable that our workplace environment is stressful, and we, so that changed my focus quite considerably. I suppose in a way I just took more interest in people than I've ever done before. And that's kind of the journey I'm on now. And that's kind of where I think my journey is going to end. I'm going to continue to build this process for the Back on Tracks platform. I'm going to continue to work. I work with an amazing brand, just to ask a question, JAAQ, JAAQ, who are working in the mental health space as well. Honestly, anyone listening to this, check it out. It's an amazing platform. It's JAAQ, JAAQ.org. That's the free to use platform. And then there is another platform which they are building now called JAAQ at Work, which is for enterprise and SME market clients. Great company. And I'm also working with a wellbeing strategy company based out of London in the Middle East, who are called Wellwise. And all three are beautifully linked together. There is just this synergy between those three brands. What JAAQ does with providing information for people who need to ask a question of an expert about why do I feel so low, or why am I always anxious, or they cover so many subjects like the menopause, which is such a huge subject and such a huge issue for women of menopausal years in the workplace, because the workplace doesn't understand the changes their bodies are going through. So these platforms are where women can go, where managers can go and get answers to questions on the menopause that they probably aren't being given by their workplace. It's just getting the knowledge. If you've got the knowledge, you've got the information to then make the next step on the journey. And so that's what JAAQ do. And then the next step on the journey, if you're suffering with anxiety and you think, right, I now understand, yes, I am suffering with anxiety. The next stage is for JAAQ to connect them to a solution that enables them to go down a treatment pathway. And that's where Back on Track fits in. We're a solution where you can get that access to that help. And equally, from a workplace wellbeing point of view, Wellwise is the company that a company can go to build a strategy around how do I engage my people in a wellbeing model that's good for them and good for business. Because everybody that works in the wellbeing space knows that businesses have to do that and be kind to their people, because actually it's so difficult to recruit people these days. So retention's a massive part of it. And people are leaving because their environments are toxic, or they're not comfortable environments to work in. And you know what? How much does it cost to try and recruit a replacement? Someone who's a great asset, but's just decided that this business isn't looking after me mentally anymore, and I'm going to leave and find a brand who I've researched who has great well-being services, and who on Glassdoor, for example, people are waxing lyrical about what great people they are to work for. I want to work for a company like that. I don't want to work for a company that grinds me into the ground. And I think, strategically, that's got to be something that's dealt with from the top down. It can never be dealt with from the bottom up. So Wellwise help companies to assess their environments, and then they put strategy in place and help them to execute it. But executing it is also about connecting the dots. So it's about getting a JAAQ solution in to give people the information and give them open, safe access to that information. Getting a Back on Track solution in to, if they need help, to be able to just track down a pathway to get the help they need. So, it is about looking at this holistic picture and deciding, right, how can I help all these people to join together? Well, I can just be the person that just talks to them openly and says, I think you should speak to these people. I think you should speak to these people. And I think in that space, what I would like to say is competition is important for business because it drives profit, and profit drives sustainability. But also collaboration is massive. And I honestly think that more businesses in the well-being space should be talking to each other, should be sharing the data, should be understanding where they can join the dots with each other, just to make the solution that bit more adaptable and that bit more accessible for the people and for businesses, so that businesses can afford to buy it and can see the benefits from investing in that solution, because there is a measurable benefit coming back the other way.
I think especially in well-being, for example, is an industry that is all about helping people. It's not necessarily about driving profit first to the company. It's really about helping people. And I feel like when companies in that kind of industry collaborate, the impact is so much greater. And the impact also has side benefits in terms of profits and things like that. So I agree with you in terms of competition is so important, and we should always be competing. I feel like, and I see it similar like with this kind of podcast where, you know, me amplifying other people's voices in this space is really, really important. Even though the listeners might go to their podcast instead of mine, actually that's okay because people are getting helped. People are getting knowledge, they're getting information. So I really agree with you in terms of collaboration, especially in this kind of industry environment, is so important because it's all about, at the end of the day, helping as many people as possible.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, that is what gets me out of bed every day. That's what drives me, is the fact that today I'm going to meet this company and maybe I can join a dot. And if I can join that dot and get those two companies to collaborate, there's a benefit to both companies. But more importantly, their audience are organizations looking to deliver a better well-being environment for their people. So joining those dots means that ultimately we are going to create a better solution for those 20, 30, 50,000 employees who are all receiving or are all plugged into those services through their employer. So I mean, you're absolutely right. I'm 100% on the same page, to be honest. That's where I think we've all got to strive to move towards. I mean, the world we live in is ever changing, and you know, one of the key subjects we hear a lot about is transformation in business. And when businesses transform, what we talk about with transformation is the word change. And you know, there are, if you're neurodivergent, change is a challenge. Because, for example, if you're autistic, my son's diagnosis was that he was diagnosed as suffering as having Asperger's syndrome, which means that for him, change is hugely unsettling. So if you're working in a business where you are on a transformational journey, so you're constantly changing and adapting to your market, change is now going to become the one thing that drives your business daily or monthly or yearly. And if you've got a percentage of your employees who are undiagnosed with autism or undiagnosed with ADHD, and it's very, very, very probable that you have, that's going to challenge people. And so being aware that there is a percentage of your workforce that's likely to struggle with change means that you should be more focused on how to manage that. And I've experienced in the past few years companies that put people on a redundancy list because they think they will not embrace change. And for me, that is looking at a list and thinking, God, that person's been here X number of years, that person's been here Y number of years. That's a lot of retained corporate knowledge that is just going to be exited from the business because somebody has made a decision that actually they're going to be a challenge to us getting transformation completed. And actually, really, what should be is investing in mindset, in mindset change. How could we train that person to be more open to change? How could we help them with a mindset course to understand how to change your behaviors based on being comfortable with change and being given the chance to understand it? And I think, you know, that's I've seen that happen, and it's not a nice thing to see. And I think we need to be thinking all the time about kind of, you know, what that mix is in our workforces, and how do we help those people to adapt to what is the future, and the future is constant change.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. I wanted to go back to something that you mentioned earlier about the difference between the environments that you'd built as a MD or as a leader and what you were experiencing in some of those new environments where you're now.
Let's start with what you asked last and we'll work our way forward. So I started my businesses literally by, right, I'm going to have an agency. I need to build the capital. When you become, like I was a sales rep, and I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I had a wingman. So in the print industry, you have an account manager who works for you. He works alongside you. Okay, so you go out, you go see the client. The client says, right, I want you to quote me a 10,000 run on this brochure with this paper with these finishes, and you rely on your account team to go and do the quote. And the account team will do the quote, they'll run it by the office manager, then it's given to you, and then you go and follow it up. That's my first experience of interacting properly with someone in a team, because that's a team. Like I know that. So the client, the company I work for was the most expensive printer in the Northwest. So it was a challenge because people bought on price, because the technology in the print sector was so good that that Heidelberg, a German machine, was by far the best quality machine. But the Japanese had come into the market with a machine called the Komori, and the quality was just you couldn't tell the pair apart. And the cheap print shops would use the Komoris, and they would farm the print out at a cheaper price, and we used the Heidelbergs. Heidelbergs were more expensive, and subsequently our prices were more expensive. So how did I get people to that level where I could still sell and be successful, offering print quality which they expected, whether they got it from me or whether they got it from 3 other suppliers? And it was down to team. It was down to response. I could get them a price quickly. The price was a little bit more expensive, but they liked me. I was upfront. If I could drop the price, I'd drop the price. But it was give and take, and the relationship built between us, between the print buyer and me, meant that he knew he had some leeway in that price. So this time I'm going to get the job through at the higher price. Next time I'd need to drop the price. But quality was never a discussion. It was a given. You would deliver good quality work. And so relying on that team and introducing them to the team so that they could go straight to the team and just talk to them about, can you just get me a variation on a price? So it didn't have to always come through me. That worked. That's when I realized that teams were really important. So when I went out of there and started to build the agency, I was in this first agency. I was responsible for building my account management team, and I handpicked them. I went out and did the recruitment. I chose the people who not necessarily had all of the experience, but had a great personality, or someone who clearly illustrated enthusiasm and commitment and those sorts of things. And I built the teams on that basis. And I would hope that people who worked with me all those years ago said I was a great person to work with, and that I was always fair. I think when I moved into environments in the latter part of my career, which has been over the last 7 or 8 years, where I've been in environments where, yes, I'm building a team, but the team still sits under a culture, and the culture dictates how that team functions to a degree. Yes, you can, as the person that's brought that person in, still influence the way your team works, but there are still guidelines that you have no say over. And pressures and expectations means that you're the person, not the business, that's asking that individual to work till 10 p.m. tonight to get this code built, to get this solution out for a customer. And that was a completely different experience altogether, because I was expected to make sure that job was delivered. When I was the business owner, I could go to the client and say, look, this is a tall order. We'll get it done, but we might run over. It'll be for these reasons. But I could negotiate commercially. If I run over with that, maybe I drop the price a bit, and we can get the balance. The margins in the products are there, and I know what I'm doing. In an environment where you don't have that control, you are working to an immovable deadline, and the immovable deadline is what you're going to be judged by. And if you miss that deadline, it's not your team's problem; it's your problem. and that's what I mean about how these things come to play out. So yeah, I found that challenging. I won't lie. I found it challenging to ask one of my team if he could work till 10 o'clock on a work day to get that job finished because a client was banging the table. And although I would speak to the client and say, I understand why you need it for that, there was no give in it. The relationship was completely different because I wasn't holding the reins in the business. I was just another cog in the wheel of the delivery mechanism. So I did find that. I did find that quite difficult. And ultimately, I have to say, in a couple of situations, it's the reason why I left. It's the reason why I just chose to get out the business. I mean, one of the roles, I was actually quite comfortable saying it. I was actually asked if this role was really for me, and it was a case of, well, we can talk about you leaving. We think that's the right solution. And I was like, categorically, it is the right solution. I can't carry on in this environment expecting these people to do the things that they do. I'm good with it. I'm okay. I don't hold any grudge. These things happen, and that just wasn't me. I wasn't capable of being that way. And it actually, to be honest, it sucked out my enthusiasm and my enjoyment. I just was like, what am I going to go into today, and what am I going to have to ask people to do today that I don't feel comfortable asking them? And that was, it weighed heavy on my mind, and it was the reason why in 2 roles I just decided this just isn't for me. And I didn't particularly like the culture of that pressure culture. But I think some people out there, Tolu, would call me a flake for that, and I'm comfortable with it. I'm really, really comfortable that I think, old school would say, well, you do a job, you do it to the best of your ability, and if you have to work late to get it done, you have to work late to get it done. Like, consulting practices, I mean, that's a perfect example of a business model where you put the hours in to deliver the results, and there's no question asked. You're just going to do it, and you just do it like a robot, and then you burn out. And if we look at, the burnout statistics across industry as a whole, we're seeing so many people burning out these days: leaders, colleagues, middle management. We're even hearing, senior leaders and boards and senior leaders and C-suite actually openly explaining that they've left the business, they've burnt out, and they need to recuperate. And do you know what? That is absolute music to my ears, that someone shouldn't feel judged for that. It's just crazy. But I genuinely still think in certain industries, it's not acceptable to be burnt out. And my son went to a school when he was going through his troubles, and the deputy head in that school told him to man up. And I got up, shook his hand, and said, my son is not coming to your school tomorrow. I'm taking him out. I'll find him somewhere else to go. Because if you think that this problem is going to be solved by a stiff upper lip and the old British, just get on with it, son, it's not going to happen. Yeah. And I took him out. Keep calm and carry on. And that school's a great school, by the way. That school's a great school. But it was old school at that time, and I just wasn't happy that was their attitude. So, and I think that business works in a similar way, and I still think there are certain sectors in today that have that same attitude.
What were some of the things that you did? Because you mentioned...
That's where I actually decided that I needed to focus on mental health, and I needed to focus on well-being and start actually working in that space. It was a space that I'd read a lot on. I mean, in the last few years of my career, I've probably got up every morning with the attitude that every day's a school day. There's always something new to learn, and I think that's the key to it's the key to development, no matter what age you are, is always have that attitude that you can learn a bit more, because I just think it enriches your knowledge base, obviously, but it also gives you knowledge to look for new experiences, to try new things, to ask that question that you wouldn't have asked because you didn't understand it, and now you've read the book or you've read the article and it's a subject that interests you, ask the question. Don't ever be afraid to feel stupid by asking a question, because if it gives you an answer that enhances your knowledge, it was the right thing to do. Don't ever feel judged by asking a question. It's like I say to my kids, if you're not sure what your manager, your director is asking you, clarify it. Just clarify it. There's nothing worse than going off down a pathway because you're scared to ask the question and spending 2 days doing a job that which you deliver a result and they go, well, that wasn't really what I was looking for, and it's because you didn't understand. Feel free to ask the question, but then if that business doesn't create the safe space for you to ask the question, you're not going to ask it. So it's as much about the culture and the environment as it is about you as an individual feeling comfortable. So to answer your question, I just decided that this is telling me lots of things, and actually I'm more sensitive to it. I'm more sensitive to how working environments can create burnout, how people can be ultimately affected to the point where they choose to throw a sickie, or they choose to not get out of bed and go into work, or just, I need a holiday, so I'm just going to take a last minute holiday today just for a break. That's wrong. There should be a dial in that business that's checking to make sure that everybody is not in the red, and that we're all in the white space on a dial, and that we're not pushing our people to a point where that red can create them a major problem. And to go back to what we said at the beginning, and the other thing is, am I scanning the horizon to see what's going on? When Chris has come in today, he's looking like he's just not himself. If my relationship's good with Chris, I should ask him, are you all right, Chris? What, is there something can I help? Do you just need to talk? And I know a lot's been done very positively in the last 18 months to 2 years. TV, you've seen it on ITV, doing those It's Good to Talk ads telling us to not bottle things up inside. And, but there's still a stigma around mental health. There's still a stigma, and that's why the Back on Track gives you the option to choose a therapist or to choose a coach. And the coach is there for a very simple reason. They can still deliver the solution in a similar model, similar pathway, single session intervention to a therapist. But somebody might be uncomfortable asking for therapy. So if we just frame it differently, we say, well, you can ask for coaching. Okay, just go. The model's the same. You get the same experience, the same customer journey. There's a slight difference, and from a technical perspective and a technical delivery, from a practitioner point of view, there are different aspects to it. But ultimately, the customer experience is pretty much the same. You're partnering with someone who's working with you jointly. They're asking you about the problem, and we're focusing on the problem. They're going to give you strategies and help to overcome that problem, and they're going to follow up with you and understand whether the problem has been resolved through all these mechanisms. It's just that this person's called a coach, and you'll engage with them because the stigma around mental health is such that if it was only a therapist, you wouldn't connect with the therapist. And that's having that putting everything under a microscope and looking at it and understanding it and deciding, actually, this is a different way to deal with it. It's the same end result, just framed so that person doesn't feel stigmatized. I'm a person that I happily tell someone, I've had some therapy. But everybody, we're all individuals, and we all have our fears. And men, as we know, it's talked about a lot. We don't talk about our problems. We can have a very close-knit group of friends, and yet it seems to us mentally to be taboo to say to a very close friend, God, really struggling. I can't, work's just getting to me, and I can't see a way out of it. I can't, I've got a family, I've got kids and a family to support. and I can't just leave this job. Where am I going to earn the money? And that can lead somebody into, a very dark pathway. Whereas if they speak to somebody who can break it down and look at the individual problem and say, right, well, maybe this is the problem. This is what we need to deal with. And that can be started just by a conversation with a friend. But that friend can say, go and speak to someone who can help you. Go and I've heard about this JAAQ.org platform. If you think you're suffering with anxiety or burnout, go on that platform. There's a great there's like 150 questions on burnout. Ask the question. It will give you an answer. It will help you to understand. And it's a safe space. You can go. You're not judged by anybody. You get access to the information. Once you've got the information, you can decide where you go next. Because once you know, and then you can take the pathway forward to a solution. If you never ask, and it's always burning away inside, that it leads to really dark places, and sadly, as we know, it leads to people taking their own lives, which is something we should all be focused on, trying to reduce that number and trying our very best in workplaces through engaging with people. Even asking somebody if they're okay, but showing real empathy when you do it. I really am interested. I really do care. It's critical, and I am very positive about that, because I just think I am seeing companies coming to the fore who are offering these great services, and I think there is much more of a focus in businesses on workplace wellbeing, and I do think we'll see it improve quite dramatically. But I'm staggered by companies that buy benefits to tick boxes and don't have a strategy behind why I'm implementing these things. What should it be? It should be data. We should be auditing our workplace, understanding what the pain points are, using that data to put the services in, so that the services literally map onto what the problem is. Not just assume the problem is X, Y, and Z, put a load of services, and then wonder why, when you measure, if they do at all measure, the engagement is so ridiculously low that it just seems like you're wasting money. But people aren't getting the benefits as well, because you're putting the wrong things in. You're not listening to what they're saying, and I think that's key. So I think to in a roundabout way of answering a very specific question, knowledge is power. Get the knowledge, whether it's you deliberately go and find it, whether you talk to the right people, whether you're just inquisitive and you just go and you go and jump, you book yourself into a webinar on a subject that you never thought doesn't work. This webinar doesn't relate to my sector, but it might be on a subject that if I learn about it, I can understand how that's going to affect my sector or affect my team or my role. And I think a good manager is someone that thinks about the team and thinks about what are the things I do need to know. Like if in my team I have a lady who is 50, it's highly likely that she's in the menopausal years, and if she needs the window open because she's really hot and everyone's complaining, it's because she's experiencing a variation in her body temperature because of her condition, because of her menopausal body change, and you need to be mindful of that. It's little things that help you, because without that person is very likely at some point just to feel awkward and feel like she's actually a burden on the team, because she's always the one that is got the windows open and everyone else is freezing in the office, or if the windows are shut and she's experiencing hot flushes. It's important. I never doubted myself as being a good dad. I was just distracted by things around me, and the things were always, as I said earlier, work. And I think for me, the thing I take from it is that it's opened up my eyes to work-life balance. I think I now have a pretty good work-life balance. I am very mindful of being ever present in the family. I'm committed to my job. I love what I do. I'm working with JAAQ, and I'm absolutely the hugest fan of that solution. And I was very deliberate in wanting to get to work with them. I was quite insistent that somehow I got a role in this company because I love it so much. But no role takes precedent over my family, and that's probably going to get in the way when I talk to investors. That, you know, I'm going to be honest and say, you know, I will build this platform and I will build this business based on these rules, and these rules will not map categorically onto some investors' needs to be able to get 100% commitment, to be able to get every ounce of energy out of me, to be able to get that 10 times return on their investment that they need. And do you know what? That business isn't the right person to invest in me, because my teams, when I build this platform, will be all around work-life balance. It will be all around happiness and enjoying your work, and through enjoyment, building passion for what we do. And the people I will employ, and the people I have started to employ, are people who want to help people get better. And I think that's critical. So yeah, I think the thing that I learned from it was you can still be effective in business and have a good balance between your work and your home life. And you know what? Well, something that I read quite a lot on LinkedIn, which I think is really important to finish on, is those leaders that say, if one of my staff says to me, I just don't feel right today, I say to them, okay, just take the day off. Just go home, reset, or don't come in, just reset today. It's fine. There's no pressure. I'm not going to judge you on this. It doesn't, you know, I think good people don't take advantage of that situation. They just do it when they know that actually I just need that reset opportunity.
Need to.
Why should you have to take a holiday to reset? You shouldn't have to take a holiday to reset. Just, you know, if I'm going to come back in tomorrow, I'm going to be my best self again, or I'm going to be focused on.
I agree, and I think what I've seen from my limited management experience is that a lot of those good people that you're talking about, they're the same people who work evenings and weekends on a regular basis to get stuff done. So why is it that now, when they need something that isn't necessarily contracted, that I'm going to then make them take a holiday? Because if I really had to look at actually how much I owe them for all the late nights, for all the weekend work, I know that I owe them way much than they actually owe me. So it's kind of like, why would I not give them that space? Because like you said, they're one of my good people. Why would I not give them that space? You know?
Yeah, 100%. I think you're absolutely right. And I think it is about understanding. You know, it's a relationship, isn't it, at the end of the day? And that relationship is knowing that there's something in the tank that you should give back. And I'm contradicting myself a bit. You don't need to see it like that. You just don't even weigh it up like that. You just know that that's a good person who is always committed and is just struggling right now. And I need them. Actually, although you're absolutely right, you will subconsciously be thinking, this person is so important to my team for this and this reason. That drives the decision. The culture should be not just you as a manager, but your culture. So the business culture should be that it's telling its managers, if one of your team's struggling, get to the bottom of it, give them some leeway. And that should be what your employer is saying to the manager that you can do, rather than you having to be an owner to be able to say that.
I love that. Chris, thank you so much for your time, for your thoughts, for your vulnerability in sharing, you know, some of the things that you've been through. I really, really appreciate it. And I know that this will help a lot of people. So thank you so much for being here.
And thank you for inviting me. I'm so passionate about this space. It's such an important space, and to get the opportunity that you've given me just to talk about it, and you know, if it just impacts one person, then this is the purpose of why we have these podcast mechanisms, isn't it? This is why we do what we do, so that we can just spread a bit of knowledge and a bit of hope to people, and also just reinforce if someone's feeling this way. It reinforces that it's not wrong to ask for help. It's not.
Thank you for watching this episode of the Dunamis EQ Leadership Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, flick through our channel and there's loads more that you can watch. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so that you can hear first when new episodes drop. We'll catch you on the next episode.